The massive silver ship appeared over Seoul like a floating mountain made of metal and light. People on the street stopped walking and pointed up at the sky with their phones already recording videos. The ship was bigger than any building in the city, and it hummed with a deep sound that made car windows vibrate slightly. Inside the ship, Commander Vextar stood tall on 6 legs while his purple skin changed colors with his emotions. Right now it was showing bright yellow, which meant he was very excited and a little bit nervous. He had spent 40 years studying humans from far away, and today was the day he would finally meet them face to face. "Are you ready for first contact, Commander?" asked his assistant Zix Ara, a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish made of blue crystal. Her voice came from tiny speakers that sparkled all over her transparent body. Vextar adjusted his formal ceremonial robes, which were covered in metals from dozens of different planets. "The humans have been observed for many cycles. Our data shows they are a primitive species that has barely begun to understand the basics of science and technology. This should be a simple introduction to galactic civilization." The ship began to descend toward the large conference center, where Earth's most important leaders were supposed to be meeting about climate change or trade agreements or something equally boring. Vexitar had specifically chosen this location because his research team told him it would be full of the smartest and most important humans on the planet. Down on the ground, Jihoon was having a very different kind of day. He worked as a maintenance engineer at the Seoul International Conference Center, and right now he was supposed to be fixing a broken air conditioning unit on the roof. Instead, he was sitting on a folding chair, drinking his 3rd beer of the lunch break while watching funny videos on his phone. The beer was getting warm in the afternoon sun, and Jihoon was thinking about going back to work when a huge shadow fell over the building. He looked up and saw the alien ship hovering directly above him. Most people would probably run away or call the police or at least stop drinking beer. Jihoon took another sip and kept watching his phone. "Well, that's new," he said to nobody in particular. The ship landed in the big parking lot next to the conference center with surprising gentleness for something so massive. A door opened in the side of the ship, and a ramp extended down to the ground. Bright white light poured out of the opening along with some kind of dramatic music that sounded like a symphony mixed with whale songs. Jihoon watched as several very strange creatures walked down the ramp. The tall purple one in fancy clothes seemed to be the leader. Behind him came floating jellyfish things, creatures that looked like walking trees, and something that might have been a giant butterfly if butterflies were made of living metal and had too many eyes. The aliens walked across the parking lot in a very formal procession toward the main entrance of the conference center. They moved slowly and kept looking around like they were expecting crowds of important people to come out and greet them with ceremonies and speeches. Instead, they found Minho. Minho owned a food truck called Kim's Kitchen on Wheels, and he had been parked outside the conference center all week, selling lunch to the security guards and maintenance workers. Right now he was cleaning his grill and humming a popular song while completely ignoring the massive alien spaceship that had just landed 50 meters away from his truck. When the aliens reached the entrance to the building, they stopped and seemed confused. Commander Vexistar had expected to be met by presidents and scientists and maybe some military officers. Instead, there was just a guy in a dirty work uniform drinking beer on the roof, and another guy cooking food next to a small truck. Vextar cleared his throat, which made a sound like a musical instrument being tuned. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Commander Vextar of the Celestial Alliance representing the Galactic Federation of Advanced Civilizations. We come in peace to welcome your species to the greater community of intelligent life in the universe." His words came out of a small device that translated them into perfect Korean. The sound was loud enough to be heard clearly across the parking lot. Minho looked up from his grill and waved with a greasy spatula. "Oh, hello there. You guys want some bulgogi? I got a lunch special going on." Up on the roof, Jihoon heard the announcement and decided this was probably more interesting than fixing air conditioning. He finished his beer and climbed down from the roof using the maintenance ladder. By the time he reached the parking lot, the aliens were standing around looking very confused while Minho continued cooking and asking if they wanted extra vegetables with their order. "So you're aliens, huh?" Jihoon said as he walked up to the group. He was still carrying his empty beer bottle and wearing his work clothes, which had grease stains and patches of rust from the building's old pipes. Commander Vextar tried to regain control of the situation. He straightened up to his full height, which was impressive since he was nearly 3 meters tall. Yes, human. We are representatives of 47 different advanced civilizations. We have traveled across the galaxy to make formal first contact with your species and offer you membership in our federation. That's nice, Jihoon said. Then he turned to Minho and held out his empty beer bottle. Hey, hold my beer for a second. The alien translation devices immediately converted this into their various languages. Commander Vexitar's device told him that the human wanted his companion to temporarily take custody of a fermented beverage container. Zixara's translator said the human was requesting beverage maintenance services. The tree-like alien's device suggested the human was performing some kind of ritual involving alcoholic drinks. None of them understood why beverage management was relevant to intergalactic diplomacy, but they had studied human customs and knew that different species had different social protocols. Maybe this was how humans began important conversations. Minho took the empty bottle without thinking about it much. Sure, no problem. You want me to throw this away, or are you saving it for something? Just hold on to it, Jihoon said. Then he turned, back to the aliens. So you guys think you're pretty advanced, right? Got some fancy technology and stuff? Vextar's skin color shifted to a confident blue-green. Indeed, human Jihoon. He had learned the man's name from scanning his work identification badge. Our civilizations have mastered faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, dimensional, engineering, and countless other technologies that your species has not yet discovered. Faster-than-light travel? Jihoon scratched his head and looked thoughtful. Oh yeah, we figured that out already. The aliens all made various sounds of surprise and confusion. Vextar's skin rapidly cycled through several colors, which meant he was experiencing multiple emotions at once. I beg your pardon, human Jihoon, but our long-range sensors show no evidence that your species has developed FTL capability. Well, of course not, Jihoon said. We just figured it out last Tuesday. At this moment, Sunwoo appeared from around the corner of the building. He was pushing a cart full of cleaning supplies and wearing the uniform of the janitorial staff. He had been listening to the conversation while emptying trash cans and decided to join in. Oh, you talking about the faster-than-light thing? Sunwoo said cheerfully. Yeah, my cousin Hyunwoo got that working in his garage. He was trying to fix his old car but accidentally made it go faster than light instead. We're still not sure how he did it. Commander Vextar felt his confidence beginning to crack like ice in warm water. His research had been very thorough. Earth showed no signs of advanced technology. No massive energy signatures, no dimensional distortions, no quantum manipulation fields. Just a planet full of humans using primitive combustion engines and basic electronics. Perhaps there is some misunderstanding, Vextar said carefully. Faster-than-light travel requires mastery of space-time manipulation, exotic matter generation, and dimensional fold engineering. These are technologies that took our civilizations thousands of years to develop. Jihoon shrugged. Yeah, Hyunwoo's always been good with cars. He can fix anything. Last month he got his microwave to work as a time machine, but only backwards, and only for about 10 minutes. Time travel is impossible, declared Zixara, her crystalline body flashing with alarmed red colors. Our greatest scientists have proven that causality loops cannot be sustained without destroying the fabric of reality. Tell that to Hyunwoo, Sunwoo said. He used it to go back and buy lottery tickets. Won about 50,000, one before the eye. Microwave broke. The aliens looked at each other with growing concern. Either these humans were lying, which seemed unlikely given their casual tone and complete lack of interest in impressing anyone, or Earth was far more dangerous than their intelligence reports had suggested. Commander Vextar decided to take a different approach. Perhaps we could meet with your leaders, your scientists and government officials. Oh, they're all inside having meetings about carbon emissions or whatever, Minho said, gesturing toward the conference center with his spatula. Bunch of guys in suits talking about boring stuff. You don't want to deal with them. They'll just argue about paperwork and make you fill out forms. We are the Galactic Federation, Vextar said, his voice rising slightly. We represent the most advanced civilizations in known space. That's cool. Gee. Commander Vexitar felt his world beginning to tilt sideways like a ship in a storm. Everything his science teams had told him about Earth was wrong. These humans were not primitive at all. They were casually demonstrating technology that should have been impossible even for the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. He needed to regain control of the situation before it got completely out of hand. The Celestial Alliance had not become the dominant force in galactic politics by being intimidated by vacuum cleaners that could edit reality. Even if those vacuum cleaners were absolutely terrifying from a scientific standpoint. Impressive, Vexter said, though his skin color betrayed his nervousness by shifting to a worried orange. However, we too have mastered technologies that might seem impossible to less developed species. Jihoon was now sitting on the concrete steps leading to the conference center entrance. He had found another beer somewhere and was drinking it, while watching the aliens with the kind of mild interest someone might show when watching street performers. Oh yeah? Like what? Vextar gestured to Zixara, who began glowing brighter. The crystalline jellyfish creature floated up into the air and started projecting a three-dimensional hologram above the parking lot. The image showed a massive space station that seemed to twist and fold in ways that hurt to look at directly. Behold, Vextar announced with renewed confidence, the crown station of the Andromeda Collective. This structure exists simultaneously in 7 different dimensions. It required the combined efforts of our greatest architects and engineers, working for over 2 centuries to design and construct. The hologram rotated slowly, showing impossible angles and surfaces that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions at once. Parts of the station appeared to be inside other parts while somehow still being on the outside. It was the kind of architecture that could drive mathematicians insane just by looking at it. Minho had stopped cooking and was examining the hologram while wiping his hands on his apron. Huh, that's pretty neat. Looks kind of like that apartment building downtown where all the rooms are bigger on the inside than the outside. That is impossible, Zixara said, her voice coming from multiple speakers at once. Spatial expansion beyond dimensional boundaries requires technology that we developed only after mastering quantum reality manipulation. Tell that to my landlord, Minho replied. My studio apartment is somehow big enough for a full kitchen, bedroom, living room, and a workshop where I fix motorcycles. The whole building is like that. Nobody knows how the architect did it, but the rent is cheap, so nobody asks questions. At this moment, Jiwon appeared from the nearby subway station. She was a college student at Seoul National University, carrying a backpack full of textbooks and wearing the kind of clothes that suggested she had been up all night studying. She was walking toward the conference center because she had heard there was free Wi-Fi in the lobby, and she needed to finish an assignment that was due in an hour. She stopped walking when she saw the aliens and the holographic space station floating in the air above the parking lot. Most people might have been amazed or frightened or at least surprised. Jiwon just looked annoyed. Seriously? She said to nobody in particular. I have a quantum physics exam tomorrow and now there are actual aliens here making me think about dimensional engineering? She walked over to where Jihoon was sitting and looked up at the hologram. After studying it for about 30 seconds, she made a dismissive sound and turned to her friend Yujin, who had just caught up with her from the subway station. This is so basic, Jiwon said. Hold my beer, I think I can do that, but with 11 dimensions. The problem was that Jiwon did not have a beer, so Yujin handed her a coffee instead. Jiwon set her backpack down on the concrete and started pulling things out of it. A smartphone, some chewing gum, a paperclip, 3 ballpoint pens, and a napkin from the convenience store. The aliens watched in growing alarm as this human student began sketching equations on the napkin using one of the ballpoint pens. The equations looked simple enough at first, but as Jiwon continued writing, they became increasingly complex and eventually started to resemble mathematical concepts that the aliens' translation devices could not even process. What is she doing? Vexitar whispered to Zixara. I believe she is attempting to create a theoretical framework for multi-dimensional architecture, Zixara replied, her crystalline body flickering with confused colors. But those equations should require massive computational resources to solve. Jiwon finished writing on the napkin and then used the paperclip to connect her smartphone to the chewing gum in a way that made no sense from an engineering perspective. She stuck one end of the paperclip into the phone's charging port and the other end into the gum, then placed the whole contraption on top of the napkin. "Okay, this might take a few minutes," she said to Eugen. "I need to bootstrap a dimensional calculation matrix using quantum entanglement between the phone's processor and the molecular structure of the gum." "Does that actually work?" Eugen asked. "I have no idea," Ji-won admitted, "but I saw someone do something similar on a YouTube video last week." The aliens stared in horror as Ji-won's improvised device began to work. The smartphone screen started, displaying three-dimensional models that rotated through mathematical spaces the aliens' computers would need years to calculate. The chewing gum began glowing with a soft blue light, and the equations on the napkin started rearranging themselves into new configurations. Within 20 minutes, Ji-won had created a complete architectural blueprint for a space station that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, while also being bigger on the inside than the outside, and capable of moving through time in both directions at once. "There," she said, picking up her coffee and taking a sip. "Your 7-dimensional thing is nice, but this is more efficient. You could probably fit about 1 million of your stations inside one room of this design." Commander Vextar felt something inside his mind break like a snapping cable. The Crown Station had been the greatest achievement of galactic civilization. Thousands of the best engineers from 47 different species had worked on it for centuries. It was considered the absolute pinnacle of what was possible with advanced technology and unlimited resources. This human student had just designed something infinitely more complex, using garbage and chewing gum, while treating it like homework she was rushing to finish before a deadline. "This is not possible," he said weakly. "Oh, this is nothing," said a new voice from behind them. "Wait until you see what I can do with my taxi." Everyone turned to see Tae-hyun walking across the parking lot from where he had parked his cab near the food truck. He was a taxi driver who had been working the same routes through Seoul for 15 years and had seen everything the city had to offer. Alien spaceships and dimensional engineering were just another Tuesday as far as he was concerned. Tae-hyun was carrying a cup of coffee from Minho's food truck and wearing the kind of comfortable clothes that suggested he spent most of his day sitting in a car. He walked up to the group and nodded politely to the aliens before turning to examine Ji-won's improvised dimensional calculator. "Nice work," he said approvingly. "But you're still thinking too small. Real engineering isn't about making things bigger or more complex. It's about making impossible things work in practical everyday situations." He gestured toward his taxi, which looked like a perfectly ordinary Seoul cab except for the fact that it was somehow parked in 3 different parking spaces at the same time, without taking up any extra room. "My cab can navigate rush hour traffic while I'm simultaneously eating lunch, texting my wife, arguing with passengers about the best route, and listening to 3 different radio stations at once," Tae-hyun explained. "Last week I drove a passenger from Seoul to Busan in negative time, which means we arrived before we left and I was able to pick up another fare on the way back." Zixara's translation systems were struggling with concepts like negative time, travel during rush hour traffic, and simultaneous radio station listening. Her crystalline body was now flashing colors that did not exist in most species' visual spectrum. "But the laws of physics," she managed to say. "What about them?" Tae-hyun asked. "Physics are just suggestions. If you follow them too strictly, you'll never get anywhere on time." He opened the door of his taxi and gestured for the aliens to look inside. The interior of the cab was somehow larger than the entire exterior of the car. There were comfortable seats, a small kitchen area, a workshop full of tools, and what appeared to be a small garden with vegetables growing under artificial sunlight. "I had to modify it a bit," Tae-hyun explained. "Seoul traffic is really bad, so I needed extra space for passengers to be comfortable during long trips. The kitchen is for when people get hungry. The workshop is for when the car breaks down. The garden is just because I like fresh vegetables." Commander Vextar walked slowly around the taxi, trying to understand how it could be bigger inside than outside, while also existing in multiple parking spaces simultaneously. His scientific training told him this was impossible. His eyes told him it was happening anyway. "How?" was all he managed to say. Well, first you have to stop thinking about space as something fixed, Taehyun said helpfully. Space is more like a suggestion than a rule. If you need more space, you just make more space. If Yo Commander Vexitar made a gesture that caused his ship to respond with a deep humming sound that made everyone's teeth vibrate slightly. The massive alien vessel began to glow with patterns of light that moved across its surface like living electricity. A new section of the ship opened up and something that looked like a small metal moon emerged from inside. The object floated down from the ship and hovered about 10 meters above the parking lot. It was perfectly spherical and covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when you looked at them directly. The air around it began to shimmer with heat waves even though the temperature had not actually changed. "Behold," Vextar announced, his voice now carrying the weight of desperate authority. "The Stellar Annihilation Device. This weapon can destroy entire solar systems by collapsing their stars into black holes. It represents the ultimate achievement of galactic military engineering and has never been used because its power is too terrible to unleash." The humans gathered around looked up at the floating sphere with varying degrees of interest. Ji-hoon shaded his eyes with his hand to get a better look. Minyo continued cleaning his grill while occasionally glancing up. Ji-won was taking photos with her phone and seemed to be running calculations on some kind of app. "We do not show this as a threat," Vextar continued quickly, realizing how his words might be interpreted. "We simply wish to demonstrate why your species should consider joining our federation, rather than attempting to develop dangerous technologies on your own." Taehyun finished his coffee and looked thoughtfully at the doomsday weapon floating above them. "That's pretty impressive," he said. "How fast does it work?" "The stellar collapse process takes approximately 14.7 standard time units," Zixara replied, grateful to finally discuss something where they had clear technological superiority. "So about 15 minutes to destroy a solar system?" Taehyun nodded approvingly. "Not bad. A bit slow for practical use, but good for making a statement." At this point, Seojin appeared around the corner of the building. He was supposed to be in school right now, but he had decided to skip his afternoon classes when he saw the alien ship landing. He was 17 years old and wearing the uniform of a nearby high school, complete with a backpack covered in patches from various bands and video games. His girlfriend Na-young was with him, carrying her own school bag and looking like she was not entirely sure that skipping class to look at aliens was a good idea. She kept checking her phone to see if any teachers had noticed they were missing. "What's everyone looking at?" Seojin asked as he walked up to the group. "The aliens are showing off their planet-destroying weapon," Do-hyun explained, while continuing to juggle across multiple time streams. "It can blow up solar systems in about 15 minutes. Seojin looked up at the floating sphere and laughed. "Hold my beer," he said to Na-young, then realized he did not have a beer and handed her his backpack instead. "That's cute," he said, studying the alien weapon with the kind of critical attention he usually reserved for video games and smartphone specs. "We had something similar happen at a gender reveal party in Busan last month." Commander Vexitar's skin color shifted through several shades of confused purple. "I beg your pardon?" "Yeah, my cousin's girlfriend was having a baby, and they wanted to do one of those big reveal things where they explode something to show if it's a boy or a girl," Seojin explained casually. "So they got some fireworks and a big balloon full of colored powder and set it off in this field outside the city." Na-young nodded in confirmation. "I saw the video on social media. It was supposed to be a simple firework display. But something went wrong with the timing," Seojin continued. "Instead of just making colored smoke, the explosion accidentally created a cascade reaction that started destroying spacetime in a widening circle. It took out 3 dimensions before someone managed to contain it." The alien stared at him in absolute horror. Zixara's crystalline body was now flashing colors that corresponded to panic in 17 different species. "You are saying," Vextar said slowly, "that humans accidentally created a reality-destroying explosion during a social celebration?" "Well, yeah, but they fixed it," Seojun said with a shrug. "My uncle Minsu works in construction, and he had some tools in his truck that could patch dimensional tears. Took him about an hour to repair the damage and put the missing dimensions back where they belonged." "The baby was a girl, by the way," Na-young added helpfully. "They had to do the gender reveal again the next week, but they used regular fireworks that time." Wu Jin had been listening to this conversation while making a food delivery on his motorcycle. He worked for one of those apps that brought restaurant food directly to people's homes and offices, which meant he spent most of his day driving around Seoul with bags of hot food strapped to his bike. He pulled up to Minho's food truck and parked his motorcycle next to Taehyun's impossibly large taxi. Like most delivery drivers, he had developed the ability to pay attention to multiple conversations, while also navigating traffic, checking his phone for new orders and making sure the food stayed hot. "Oh, you guys are talking about dimensional weapons?" Wu Jin said as he walked over to join the group. "My grandfather has something way cooler than that in his basement." Commander Vexitar felt his grip on reality becoming even more tenuous than it had been 5 minutes ago. "Your grandfather has weapons that exceed the destructive capacity of our stellar annihilation device." "Well, not exactly weapons," Wu Jin said thoughtfully. "More like construction equipment. But yeah, way more powerful than something that just destroys galaxies." He pulled out his phone and showed them a photo of an elderly man standing next to what looked like a complicated machine made from old car parts, kitchen appliances, and components that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "This is my grandfather Kyung-ho," Wu Jin explained. "He retired from his job as a mechanic about 10 years ago, but he gets bored easily, so he likes to build things in his basement workshop." The photo showed a friendly-looking old man wearing work clothes and giving a thumbs-up sign while standing next to his invention. Behind him was a machine that hurt to look at directly because it seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes were designed to process. "What does it do?" Ji-won asked, still taking photos of everything with her phone. "It makes galaxies," Wu Jin said as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "Not big ones, just little starter galaxies with a few 100 million stars each. He got the idea during COVID lockdown when he was stuck at home with nothing to do." "Your grandfather creates galaxies as a hobby?" Vexitar's voice had risen to what could only be described as a squeak. "Yeah, he's really good with his hands," Wu Jin said proudly. "Last month he made a galaxy shaped like a flower for my grandmother's birthday. She keeps it in a jar on the kitchen counter next to her homemade kimchi." Taehyun nodded in understanding. "My father-in-law does something similar but with pocket universes. He makes them for my kids to play in when they get bored with regular toys." The aliens were now huddled together in what appeared to be some kind of emergency conference. They were speaking in their own languages using frequencies that human ears could not detect, but their body language suggested they were having the kind of argument that happens when a carefully planned military operation goes completely sideways. Sunwoo had been listening while continuing to clean the building's exterior windows. He was using his reality editing vacuum cleaner to remove not just dirt, but also scratches, weathering, and general wear from the glass surfaces. As he worked, the windows became so clean they seemed to disappear entirely, creating the illusion that the building had no walls on that side. "You know," Sunwoo said thoughtfully, "if these aliens are really from some kind of galactic federation, they should probably meet Kyung-ho in person. He's always interested in talking to people who appreciate good engineering." "That's a great idea," Wu Jin said. "He lives just a few blocks from here. I bet he'd be happy to show them his workshop." "I could drive everyone there," Taehyun offered. "My taxi can fit as many passengers as needed, and it only takes about -5 minutes to get anywhere in Seoul during rush hour." Commander Vexitar was beginning to understand that this situation had moved far beyond anything his training had prepared him for. The humans were not just technologically advanced in ways that defied galactic understanding. They were treating technologies that could reshape reality as casual hobbies and family activities. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should indeed meet this grandfather Kyung-ho, in the interests of cultural exchange and scientific cooperation." "Awesome," Wu Jin said, already texting someone on his phone. "I'll let him know we're coming. He'll probably want to put on tea and show off his latest projects." Zixara floated closer to Vexitar and spoke in frequencies only he could hear. "Commander, I must advise extreme caution. If these humans possess reality-altering technology that they treat as recreational activities, we may be dealing with a species that has transcended conventional understanding of physics and engineering." "I am beginning to suspect," Vexitar replied in the same inaudible frequency, that our entire approach to galactic civilization may need fundamental revision. Kyung-ho lived in a modest AP. The walk back to the conference center took longer than expected, because Taehyun's taxi had decided to take a scenic route through several dimensions that did not technically exist in normal Seoul geography. By the time they arrived at the parking lot, word had spread through social media about the alien visitors, and a small crowd had gathered to watch the proceedings. Commander Vextar was grateful for the extra time because it gave him a chance to think about what he had seen in Kyung-ho's workshop. Unfortunately, the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. Every piece of evidence suggested that humans had somehow developed technology that made the Galactic Federation look like children playing with simple toys. What disturbed him most was not just the advanced technology, but the casual way humans treated it. Kyung-ho had been creating pocket universes with the same attitude most people might use when building birdhouses or growing tomatoes in their garden. It was clearly just a hobby for him, something to pass the time during retirement. "I need to understand how this is possible," Vextar said to Zixara as they approached the crowd that had gathered around their spaceship. "Our intelligence reports showed no signs of advanced civilization on Earth. No massive energy signatures, no signs of space-time manipulation, no evidence of quantum engineering on a planetary scale. Perhaps," Zixara suggested, "our sensors were not calibrated to detect the type of technology these humans use." As they got closer to the crowd, Vextar could see that it consisted mostly of ordinary people who had heard about the aliens and come to take pictures and videos. There were office workers on their lunch breaks, students cutting classes, street vendors who had closed their shops temporarily, and parents with small children who thought meeting aliens would be educational. One of the people in the crowd was Gel, who operated a street food cart that served spicy rice cakes and fried chicken to people working in the nearby office buildings. She had been preparing food for the lunch rush when someone told her about the aliens, so she had wheeled her cart over to see what was happening. Like most street food vendors, Gaul took pride in being able to cook large quantities of food quickly and efficiently. Her cart was equipped with several gas burners, a deep fryer, and various heating elements that allowed her to prepare dozens of different dishes simultaneously. "So you're the aliens everyone's talking about," she said to Commander Vextar as the group approached. "You guys hungry? I got some really good chicken that just came out of the fryer." The aliens had not eaten anything since arriving on Earth, and after the stress of the morning's revelations, they were actually quite hungry. Vextar accepted a container of fried chicken while trying to figure out how to ask about human technology without seeming too desperate for information. "This food preparation equipment," he said, gesturing at Gaol's cart. "Does it operate using standard thermal combustion principles?" Gaol looked at him like he had asked if water was wet. "Well, sort of. I modified it a bit to cook faster during the lunch rush." She opened one of the panels on her cart to show him the interior. What Vextar saw inside made his skin color shift rapidly through several shades of alarmed purple. The heating elements were operating at temperatures that should have created fusion reactions. The metal surfaces were somehow containing energy levels that would normally require magnetic confinement systems the size of buildings. "I needed something that could cook meat all the way through in about 10 seconds without burning the outside," Gaul explained. "So I figured out how to make the heat work from the inside out by convincing the atoms in the food to vibrate at exactly the right frequency." "You are manipulating atomic structure for cooking?" Zixara asked, her crystalline body flashing colors that indicated severe scientific distress. "Just a little bit," Gail said. "Nothing fancy. I'm not changing what the food is made of, just making it cook more evenly and faster." She demonstrated by dropping a piece of raw chicken into what looked like a perfectly ordinary deep fryer. Within seconds, the chicken emerged perfectly cooked, golden brown on the outside and juicy on the inside, without any of the oil that should have been absorbed during the frying process. "The oil just borrows the chicken for a few seconds to teach it how to be crispy," Gaol explained. "Then the chicken goes back to being chicken, but with better texture and flavor." At this point, Jungwoo finally arrived at the scene. He was a professor at Seoul National University, who had been in a faculty meeting when he heard rumors about aliens landing at the conference center. As someone who taught physics and engineering, He felt professionally obligated to investigate what was happening. Jungwoo was wearing the kind of slightly rumpled clothing that suggested he spent more time thinking about theoretical problems than worrying about fashion. He carried a briefcase full of papers and had the general appearance of someone who was perpetually running, slightly late for something important. "Sorry I'm late," he said as he approached the group. "I had to finish grading midterm exams. So, these are our alien visitors?" Commander Vexitar was relieved to finally meet someone who seemed like they might be a proper scientist. "Indeed. I am Commander Vexitar representing the Galactic Federation. Are you perhaps a leader in your planet's scientific community?" "I teach undergraduate physics," Jungwoo said modestly. "Nothing too exciting? Basic stuff like quantum mechanics, relativity, thermodynamics." "Ah, foundational knowledge," Vexitar said, feeling more confident. "Perhaps you can help me understand how your species has developed such advanced technology without any apparent theoretical framework." Jungwoo looked confused. "I'm not sure what you mean. We follow the same basic physical laws as everyone else, don't we?" "But your students," Zixara interjected, "surely they are working within conventional scientific paradigms." "Oh, absolutely," Jungwoo agreed. "Although sometimes they come up with solutions that are a bit more creative than what you'd find in textbooks." He pulled a stack of graded exam papers from his briefcase and showed them to the aliens. "Here's a good example. Last semester, one of my students, Somin, had to solve a problem about perpetual motion for her engineering final." "Perpetual motion is impossible," Vexitar said automatically. "It violates the conservation of energy." "That's what I told her," Jungwoo said. "But she argued that the law of conservation of energy only applies if you're working within a closed system. And since the universe itself is constantly expanding and creating new energy, you can tap into that expansion to power a machine indefinitely." He showed them Somin's exam paper, which included detailed diagrams for a machine that appeared to extract energy from the expansion of space-time itself. The math was elegant, and the engineering was practical. "She built a working prototype for her final presentation," Jungwoo continued. "It's been running continuously for 6 months now without any external power source. I had to give her a B+ instead of an A because her PowerPoint slides were kind of boring. But the actual engineering was flawless." The aliens stared at the exam paper in stunned silence. What they were looking at represented a fundamental breakthrough that would revolutionize energy production throughout the galaxy. And it had been created by an undergraduate student as homework. "Your students regularly break the laws of physics for class assignments?" Vexitar asked weakly. "Well, they don't really break the laws," Jungwoo said. "They just find creative interpretations that nobody had thought of before. Last month, a student named Min Seok proved that faster-than-light travel is possible if you convince photons to take shortcuts through folded dimensions." "How do you convince photons to do anything?" Zixara demanded. "You ask them nicely," Jungwoo said. "Min Seok discovered that photons are actually quite helpful if you explain what you're trying to accomplish and why it would be beneficial for everyone involved." At this moment, Hanul appeared with professional lighting equipment and a camera crew. She was a social media influencer who specialized in lifestyle content and had nearly 500,000 followers across various platforms. When she heard about aliens landing in Seoul, she immediately saw the potential for viral content. "This is perfect," she said, setting up her camera to get the best angle on the alien visitors. "My followers are going to love this. Aliens discovering Korean street food culture." She began live streaming while interviewing Gayul about her cooking methods. The chat filled with viewers asking questions and making comments about the aliens, but most of them seemed more interested in getting the recipe for the dimensional fried chicken. "Okay, so for today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to build a teleportation device using stuff you can buy at any convenience store," Hanul announced to her camera. She walked over to the 24-hour convenience store that was located on the ground floor of a nearby office building. The store was typical for Seoul: small, crowded with products, and staffed by someone who looked like they had been working there since before the invention of sleep. Hanul bought a package of instant ramen, a bottle of sports drink, some batteries, a roll of aluminum foil, and a phone charger. She also grabbed a bag of cookies because she was getting hungry. Back in the parking lot, she spread her purchases out on the hood of Taehyun's taxi, while explaining to her viewers how each item would contribute to the teleportation process. The instant ramen would provide the quantum entanglement fram. The sun was beginning to set over Seoul, casting long shadows across the parking lot where the most important first contact in galactic history was taking place. Commander Vexitar stood in the middle of a growing crowd of humans, each one casually demonstrating technology that should have been impossible, while his entire understanding of civilization crumbled around him like a sandcastle in the tide. He had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species that needed guidance and protection from the dangers of an advanced galaxy. Instead, he had discovered that humans had somehow transcended conventional limitations through what appeared to be pure, stubborn determination and a complete disregard for the concept of impossibility. "I think," he said slowly to Zixara, "we may have approached this situation incorrectly from the beginning." "Sir?" Zixara's crystalline body flickered with confused colors. "We assumed that advanced technology requires massive infrastructure, centuries of development and careful adherence to scientific principles," Vextar continued. "But these humans seem to have skipped all of that and gone straight to making impossible things work because they need them to work." Around them, the crowd continued to grow as more people heard about the aliens and came to see what was happening. But instead of the formal diplomatic reception Vextar had been expecting, it felt more like a neighborhood block party where everyone was casually showing off their hobbies. Changmin arrived carrying a toolbox and wearing the kind of work clothes that suggested he spent his days building things with his hands. He worked construction for a company that specialized in impossible architecture, the kind of buildings that were bigger on the inside than the outside, or existed in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, "I heard there were aliens here who wanted to see some real engineering," he said cheerfully. "You guys want to help me build something?" "What kind of something?" Vextar asked, though he was beginning to suspect that any construction project involving humans would probably violate several laws of physics. "Just a simple interdimensional bridge," Changmin said, opening his toolbox to reveal an assortment of ordinary-looking tools alongside devices that seemed to hum with contained energy. "My supervisor wants me to connect our office building to the one across the street, but the city won't give us permits to build a regular bridge because it would block traffic." "So you are going to build a bridge that exists between dimensions?" Zixara asked. "It's easier than getting the permits," Changmin explained. "Plus, it's good practice. Last month I had to build a staircase that goes up 3 floors but only takes up the space of 1 step." He began laying out materials on the sidewalk, some concrete blocks, steel beams, what appeared to be a regular construction crane, and a device that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie but was apparently standard construction equipment. "The trick is to convince space that it needs more space," Changmin said as he started working. "You can't force it, but if you explain the situation clearly and show that everyone benefits from having a bridge there, space usually cooperates." Within an hour, Changmin had constructed a bridge that existed in the gap between dimensions. People could walk across it to get from one building to another, but from street level, it was completely invisible and took up no physical space at all. "There we go," he said, wiping his hands on his work shirt. "Simple, practical, and it doesn't interfere with traffic flow." Commander Vextar watched office workers casually strolling across the invisible interdimensional bridge as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Some of them were talking on phones, others were carrying coffee, and a few were walking dogs that seemed perfectly comfortable with the concept of multidimensional architecture. "This is just regular construction work for you?" he asked. "Pretty standard," Changmin said. "Although last week I had to build a parking garage that exists in negative space, which was a bit tricky. Took me most of the afternoon to figure out how to make the cars visible to their owners, while keeping them invisible to traffic inspectors." As the evening continued, more people arrived to meet the aliens and share what they were working on. There was Donghyun, a food delivery driver who had modified his motorcycle to travel through folded space, so he could deliver hot food anywhere in the city in under 30 seconds. There was Johan, a government clerk who had streamlined the permit process by creating forms that filled themselves out using predictive algorithms based on quantum probability calculations. Each person who joined the gathering brought their own casual demonstration of impossible technology. A barista who had taught his coffee machine to brew drinks that tasted different depending on what the customer needed emotionally. A street musician whose guitar could play songs that existed only in alternate timelines. A taxi dispatcher who had organized the city's transportation network using principles borrowed from quantum entanglement theory. What struck Commander Vextar most profoundly was not just the advanced technology, but the way humans talked about it. They did not discuss these achievements as revolutionary breakthroughs or scientific miracles. They treated them as practical solutions to everyday problems, the kind of modifications anyone might make when regular methods were too slow, too complicated, or too boring. "I think I understand now," Vexatar said to the assembled crowd as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "We approached your species with the assumption that technological advancement follows a predictable pattern: theoretical research, experimental development, industrial production, widespread adoption." "That sounds really slow," Jihoon observed. He was now on his 5th beer of the day and had achieved the perfect state of relaxed wisdom that comes from being just drunk enough to see solutions that sober people miss. "But you humans seem to have bypassed that entire process," Vextar continued. "When you encounter a problem, you simply create a solution that works, regardless of whether it should be theoretically possible." "Well, yeah," said Minju, who had brought more drinks from her bar as the evening wore on. "Why would you spend years researching something when you can just figure out how to make it work right now?" She handed Commander Vextar another drink with those quantum ice cubes that somehow knew exactly what temperature and flavor would be most refreshing at any given moment. The drink tasted like hope mixed with curiosity, with subtle notes of adventure and possibility. "Your species," Vextar said, taking another sip, "has achieved something that our greatest philosophers and scientists believed was impossible. You have transcended the limitations of conventional reality through pure practical creativity." "We just don't like being told that things can't be done," Gale said. She had wheeled her food cart over to join the gathering and was providing snacks for everyone. "If someone says something is impossible, that just means they haven't figured out the right approach yet." As the night deepened, the gathering began to take on the feeling of a celebration rather than a first contact scenario. People were sharing stories, comparing notes on their latest projects, and generally treating the alien visitors as honored guests at a community party. Hanul was still live streaming, but now she was interviewing the aliens about their own technology and suggesting improvements they might make based on human approaches. Her viewers were offering helpful tips in the chat. "Try asking your FTL drive nicely to go faster. Have they considered using kimchi as a universal solvent? Maybe their weapons would work better if they were designed to create things instead of destroying them." "The strangest thing," Zixara confided to Vextar as they watched Kyungo show a group of children how to make miniature galaxies using Play-Doh and birthday candles, "is that none of this feels strange anymore." "What do you mean?" Vextar asked. "When we first arrived, their casual mastery of impossible technology seemed incomprehensible and terrifying," Zixara explained. "But now it just feels natural, like this is how intelligent beings should approach problems, with creativity, optimism, and complete disregard for conventional limitations." Vextar nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that the human approach to technology was not just about building better tools or solving practical problems. It was about maintaining a fundamental belief that the universe was flexible, cooperative, and willing to work with anyone who approached it with the right combination of determination and creativity. "Commander," he said, "I believe we need to completely revise our understanding of what it means to be an advanced civilization." "How so?" "The Galactic Federation has always measured advancement in terms of energy output, computational capacity, and ability to manipulate matter on large scales," Vextar explained. "But these humans have achieved something far more sophisticated. They have learned to collaborate with reality itself." As if to demonstrate his point, Taehyun's taxi began. playing soft music that seemed to come from the air itself, rather than any speaker system. The melody was somehow perfectly suited to the mood of the gathering. Celebratory but not overwhelming, exotic but familiar, complex but easy to follow. "How is your vehicle producing music?" Vextar asked. "I asked it to," Taehyun said simply. "Cars like to be useful, and mine knows that people enjoy music during social gatherings. So it learned how to make sound,